I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the second session, Basil Yap. Basil holds a bachelor's degree in science and civil engineering from North Carolina State University. He serves as program manager for the North Carolina Department of Transportation Aviation Unmanned Aircraft Systems Program.
Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak at this event and share a little bit about what some of the lessons learned from Hurricane Florence and our response. And during this, just prior to the storm, we're able to be on the phone with Graham and others on his team from Texas DOT. And so we appreciate those relationships with other DOTs that happen in events like this where we can kind of share lessons learned, and especially when it comes to responding to a natural disaster. So again, my name is Basil Yap. I lead the UAS or drone program for the state, and we'll just share a little bit about our response. Quickly, high level, there's a lot of different focuses for the UAS program office. Everything from regulatory to flying drones to funding research. We fly over 30 drones within our department and help kind of lead the integration within the state as well as other state agencies. So just a resource to folks in our state, and certainly want to be a resource to you as well. If you want to learn more about our program, I have some annual reports up here at the corner of this table, as well as my business card. Unfortunately, I have a flight, so promptly after my presentation, I'll exit stage left and head to the airport. But we'll have a time for Q&A and definitely want to answer your questions. So if we kind of, in reflection, look at the Hurricane Florence event, when we look at rain, you can see some of these areas up to 20 inches, or sorry, up to 50 inches, especially the southeast part of the state, which is already flat, as you know. And so this certainly was a significant event for our state. What we wanted to do is, in the days leading up to the event, make sure that we had a coordinated approach to responding to this disaster. We knew we had a new technology. We knew that we could use drones. We saw the potential already from everything from traffic monitoring to bridge inspection to job site documentation. So we knew it was going to be a useful tool. And so we wanted to make sure that if we're going to integrate this tool, this would be the first time for a hurricane response to be integrated, we wanted to make sure that we had a system that we were sharing the appropriate information with the decision makers, whether it was in the field or our leadership. And so we had a process to do that. And we actually learned some unique, we learned that there were anticipated results and benefits that we hadn't thought about. And so we put together 15 UAS teams made up of 3 to 4 folks. This was made up of both our on-call consultants as well as DOT staff and State Highway Patrol folks. It's always good to have Highway Patrol on your team because they have the blue lights and you get to where you need to very quickly. We flew over 260 missions. Those missions were anywhere between 3 to 5 flights, so lots of flights that we flew that week. And then we gathered over 8,000 videos and images. And we'll talk about how we pulled those together on a statewide map to share with the decision makers. And then another key part was the live streaming, able to go out, fly, and then stream back the video to onto the web, and folks could look at it, make assessments, and allocate resources appropriately. So that's our command center there in the top left or right hand side there, and then that it's a photo of I-40 underwater. And so I'll just quickly show you this video kind of highlighting some of the more cinematographic videos that we pulled back. And there's an excellent soundtrack, which you can't hear, but it would really tug on your heartstrings, very emotional, a light piano. But anyhow, yeah, this is the damage. We flew into Southport here, North Carolina. You see the power lines there down. Total washout. You see the utilities there still, though, in place. We sold that video to the guardrail company that made that. That was good. So, but anyhow, as you can imagine, lots of rain, a flat area, and we had multiple cresting events because the way the storm moved through. And one of the unanticipated. This is I-40, the main route right into Wilmington. If you're familiar with North Carolina, about 3 miles of it is underwater. And so again, as I noted, the primary focus was to get this information to decision makers. But what happened was we were live streaming some of these events back, and our communications officer walked in and said, we need to get this out to the public quickly. Because the public's perception, sometimes if they don't understand the extent of the damage and they see that a road is closed, they don't know that beyond that, why the road's closed. And so we can show them a picture like this, or a video like that, or picture, or the one with 3 to 4 miles of I-40, a major interstate underwater. It tells a story about, why we need to keep off the roads. And so this is one of the, as you saw, the video. It isn't a river, it's a highway. This got national and international attention. It was a great tool, again, to communicate to the public, stay off the roads. So I'll just quickly talk about our structure. Typically during a hurricane response, you have the response is led by the governor's office, of course. And so there's different groups underneath the emergency management department that are focused on the response. There's a group that's infrastructure specifically, and of course roads, airports, rail, ferries, etc. would fall under that. But for us, operating drones, we also worked with our air ops. So we're working with the folks that are coordinating Coast Guard helicopters and the National Guard helicopters, because of course drones that are flying in this airspace need to share that appropriately. And during a natural disaster event is when you're going to have high density traffic, low level operations for helicopters. So this was definitely a coordinated event at all levels. So just as a note, if within your respective groups you have drone teams, just make sure during a hurricane you're coordinating with those folks, National Guard and others. And another way we were able to kind of pull this all together was a unmanned traffic management system. So if we were out flying in the field, we were able to download this app, and AirMap is a partner in our state, and so that when you were in the field, you could geo-reference your location of where you're flying your drone operations. And then what we did is we overlaid on this map where all the existing manned helicopter flights were, using the existing radar data that we had. And so that gave us a pretty good picture of where the flight operations were happening. And so that's one part of it, right? We want to coordinate the flight operations so that we're not interfering with manned aircraft, helicopters, etc. And then we want to make sure, the data that we're collecting is then it gets to the decision makers. So kind of two parts: the flight operations and then getting that data back. And so that's what we'll talk about now. We'll talk about both the live streaming and the photos and videos that we pulled. So during the storm, post-storm, one of the primary roles of a DOT is to, of course, before the storm, allow folks to evacuate from affected areas. Post-storm, to help move goods, response teams into the affected areas. And so, as you noted, 3 miles of a major interstate underwater, we had a lot of detour routes. And on those detour routes, we didn't have traffic cameras like we normally would. And so what we did is we used drones as traffic cameras, and we would stream the video back to our traffic command center, and we could make appropriate decisions. And so right here, also during the storm, most of the damage was from water. So our cellular system was still in place. So we're able to use a hotspot, a drone, and stream this back through Vimeo to the internet, and then multiple folks could be looking at it at one time. And so typically, or a typical mission would look like this. We would have the pilot in the field. He'd be streaming the live video back. We'd have maybe a 5 to 10 second lag. And then all of us would be on the phone. So the pilot would be on the phone. He'd have an earpiece in. All the decision makers in the room would be on the phone. Because the last thing you want is to go out, fly someplace, and you get the data back, and someone says, hey, why didn't you just go right around over there and look at that? Because that's what I need to make this decision. And so we wanted to make sure that we could get folks out in the field, communicate with them, so we didn't have those type of issues. And so then we could say, hey, look over there, and the missions were a success. So this is just some video from a detour route we have here down I-40. It's a bit choppy, and this is kind of typical of what you're going to be seeing coming back with your live stream. Because of the cellular connection, it's not going to always be clear quality video. Of course, that video is being saved to your drone, so you can always pull it later. This is Kinston, North Carolina, starting to flood here. So again, we can fly down, see all these intersections will need to remain closed. We can assess any damage. And I sped all these up too. The video's up, that is. Here's the second main route into Wilmington, which is starting to flood here, so we're flying it. Our National Guard attempting to go through the floodwaters here. And so you can start to see some erosion there from the water. But you'll see this next video, we came back the next day and flew it. This is again a live event, and we can see, well, that road's closed. Gonna be closed for a while, right? We know that we can make a decision now that that is not gonna be an alternate route when the water recedes. And so again, a great tool, keep people back out of harm's way. This is an airport we're doing assessment on. It was very tough to get into this actual site, so we went out and flew it. Airports are play a crucial role in any natural disaster response when you have helicopter traffic, because helicopters will go to your airports. They need to know if they're open. They need to know if they have jet fuel so that they can keep operation. This airport turned into a seaport, so for a temporary time there you could land some float planes, but we could make some assessments that it'll turn back here, they could have in fact landed at the airport and gotten jet fuel. So anyhow, we'll keep moving here and talk a little bit about our workflow. So the live stream events, a great success. Another part of this was we wanted to make sure that, well, I'll back up. So data that we produce, DOTs typically struggle with managing data. And it's kind of because we're stovepiped, so to speak, in our different groups, and we did not want that during a hurricane. So we want to be able to share the data broadly throughout the whole department, as well as other folks that were engaged in the hurricane response. So we set up a workflow here. We use Smartsheet. Some of you may or may not be familiar with that, but it's a web-based form you can fill out. It included lat longs on it, a lat long location, and what we did is we posted that up on a GIS map that you can see which you may not be able to see. We'll get another good picture, and we're able to prioritize our project. So the GIS map pings all the mission requests coming in. We can focus on where our teams are out in the field, and we can assign appropriately. And then we had a mechanism, of course, to have metrics about how quickly we're turning around flights, and a portal to upload your data, which would automatically be uploaded to a GIS map, because your photos are already geo-referenced. So let's use that data, that metadata, and place it on a GIS map. And of course, that spurs the conversation, and we continue that loop. For example, the road we saw that one day was flooded, we could have opened it back up. The next day, clearly, we did not. So this is, again, a map here. I guess for you could maybe look on this side. This one looks a little bit clearer. A map for all the missions that we have, and then we can prioritize and assign them out to the folks in the field. And so typically we'd either phone call or email our folks in the field. They go out, fly it. This is a dam they're flying. We're looking to see if it's going to be breaching. And then they would upload the photos through a hotspot to our SharePoint site. And we ran a script every 30 minutes where we pull all those photos off and then geo-reference them on a GIS map. And so what this does is, if I get a request in, I don't need to go then call every single person that has put a request in. We did 260 missions, say, hey, here's your data, I'm gonna email you your data. We just said, go to this GIS map, you can geo-reference it, geo-reference where your missions were. Every 30 minutes you check back. And if it's uploaded, great. And so then at the end of the day, the missions we didn't complete, we'd follow up with folks for the next day. So again, a great tool I can, for those that are responding, to a natural disaster, definitely use the reference geolocations that are referenced in the photos to help you when you're sharing this data. A bunch of different folks we were sharing the data with there on the right-hand side. So again, this is that photo or the video you saw. This was a key to fly the same areas repeatedly because it could change. We started the repairs, and so during the repairs we went ahead and just flew it every day. This is an ortho photo where you have multiple photos and you're stitching them together, and of course you can kind of really zoom in. We documented this, flew it every 3 days, and you could document the repair. And so, happy to say, it's open, but not 4 lanes, but 2 lanes there now. So that was about 2 months later. Again, so I'll go through these last couple slides here, some great photos, particular event, a rail bridge. We just weren't focused on highways. There's a ferry terminal here that's washed out on Ocracoke Island. You saw the airport that we were flying. Wanted to serve the entire Department of Transportation. Really some clear takeaways. A great tool to communicate to the public about the extent of the damage. A great tool to help monitor evacuation routes and traffic. Having a system in place to push this in real time, this data, and share it is going to be key. And then again, this data was used for how we kind of approached our post-storm assessment and strategic plan to address all of the, all the infrastructure that was washed out and get our roads back open and get the traveling public moving. So. This is really the last slide. If you're interested in more about what we're doing here in North Carolina, or in North Carolina, we do have an annual event. We encourage you to attend North Carolina Drone Summit and Flight Expo a couple days. So if you're interested, again, annual reports up here, my business card, and we'll take some questions. All right, how many folks have drones within their respective organization or business? Good. What are some of the, big hurdles you guys are seeing for flying drones? Maybe regulatory hurdles, flying over traffic, that prohibition, flying over people, that prohibition, or?
We use it for inspection of bridges and things like that. It doesn't take the place of the human inspector, but it is a very good tool to enhance and augment the regular tools that you're using. And of course, the biggest things we run into, you can run into airspace constraint situations and things like that, but you just work around them. You just get more permits and permission and explain what you're doing and work your way through it. I'm not the one that does it, but this is what I've gathered from our people.
Yeah, some of the focuses that our structures unit has looked at, and we have some use case white papers we can share if you grab a business card and shoot me email. Threatened and endangered species we'd be able to use a drone for, whether we're looking at red cockaded woodpecker nesting or bats, in bridges. So using a thermal camera, you can fly, under a bridge, look up, and you can count how many warm bodies there are up there with a thermal camera. So it's a unique use case that our bridge folks are looking at. We do use a drone as well to spray for an herbicide. So we got a drone that's essentially a crop duster. We had to go through the license to get, to become a crop duster in North Carolina. And we're flying and spraying a invasive grass species out on the Outer Banks, Phragmites. What we're able to do with a drone is, instead of people trudging through the mud with a backpack sprayer, which is terribly inefficient because it's really as far as you can reach, we're able to, use less herbicide because we were more accurate with the drone by just flying over the area. We cut it down, a 2-week project, down to about 3 days. There's essentially no trace. And so working with the National Park Service on that was great, because we were probably the first to be able to fly a drone and spray that in the country. So it was less than 55 pounds, so we're still under the kind of the regulatory structure of Part 107. It was a DJI Argus. So the question was, does North Carolina own their own drones? Yes, we own over 30 drones that we have within our department. 6 of those drones are on what we call a drone loaner program. So we own them as the Division of Aviation, and if you're a new business unit or division within the department and you want to start using a drone, we train you, and then we give you this drone, and you can use it for 3 to 6 months while you figure out what is the most appropriate drone for you to use. Yeah. So we do own them. We also have on-call consultants that fly for us as well. All right, well, thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.